I'm Amanda Knox, and you're listening to Hard Knocks. Hi, RG.
Hey, how are you doing?
Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I'm really excited to speak with you.
Thank you.
So there's a lot that we can get into, and I don't know how much biographical information that you would like to share, because there's what you experienced in the past, there's what you do now, and I think that all of it informs each other. So maybe can we just start by me asking you the before the prison part?
Sure.
Can I ask that? I mean, I'm just curious to know what your relationship with spirituality, with meditation, with, energy work, all of the stuff that you are deeply invested in today. What was your relationship with that kind of stuff before you went to prison?
Yeah, I think we kind of live in a world, at least a country that's very intellectualized. So everything is kind of up here. And so I learned all of that stuff up here without actually embodying it here.
Which is classic adolescence, by the way. I think that's universally an adolescent experience. But yes, continue.
No, yeah, and I do a lot of inner child work and a lot of reflection and a lot of meditation, and I have a lot of compassion for my younger self because he just didn't grow up in an environment that was talking about these things, right? Like, I graduated college in 2010 before therapy was sort of a trending conversation. And so I just didn't have the emotional wherewithal. I didn't have, I wasn't in therapy. I didn't really understand why I had all this stuff going on. And so when I studied religious studies, I was fascinated by cultures and fascinated by the way that people around the world engage in spirituality within themselves. But again, it was very intellectualized. And
right.
I was meditating in college and I was finding that stillness, but not really embodying that stillness, if that makes sense.
Totally. Okay. So formerly incarcerated individual to formerly incarcerated individual, which, we don't often get the opportunity to speak with each other in these kinds of fashions. How old were you when you went inside?
Yeah, I was 29,
Okay.
I think. Yeah. So almost 10 years ago.
Okay.
And it feels like a lifetime ago. And maybe you can relate, but like often when I do that reflection or writing, it feels like I'm looking through a veil, like looking at a person I kind of used to know. Like I see him and I'm like, oh, I have a lot of compassion and love. And also I only quasi know you.
Identify that person. Yeah. I mean, when I look back on my pre-prison self, I often just feel this like impulse to want to protect her. Like there's just so much about the world that she didn't yet know and that made her vulnerable. And so like as well-meaning and as my younger self was so just painfully well-meaning and so painfully just like everyone in the world is good, and if you just give anybody a chance and just like smiling at strangers on the bus because a smile can't hurt anybody, and then having the awkward scenario of like weird people following me off the bus and being like, oh, what have I done? Like that's the sort of person that I was. Was there a similar sense of naivete to your pre-prison self, or were you a little more advanced than I was?
Well, that's so compassionate. I would like to think that I know who I was, but I know now that I didn't know who I was. But as a brown person, I was sort of forced at a young age to sort of have those fawning skills and adaptability skills and survival mechanisms sort of built within my body that kind of prepared me for prison in some ways. And so a part of that reflection of ability to fawn and adapt and know your surroundings was I didn't know at all who I was, because I was so good at becoming whoever I needed to be, depending upon who I was around.
Fascinating. Okay, so a large part of your memoir, which is called "The Ocean Inside Me," is about how you learned to really use meditation to heal a lot of the trauma that you were experiencing in the moment, but also past trauma that you had sort of buried deep inside of you. And part of it was through radio static. So where do you begin? Like what did the process of your practice look like on a daily basis in prison?
Yeah, I mean, thanks for asking that. And I first want to address the fact that often books and experiences can be romanticized, and they can be like, oh, I really like, oh, beautiful meditation. And it wasn't that. Prison sucked. Like
Yeah.
prison wasn't great. And so, I would like to think that I would like to say that my intentions were, oh, I want to like really go deep right away. But at first, my intention was just to get away from the noise that I couldn't get away from. You are surrounded by people 24/7, people who don't know how to sit still with themselves. Like, how do you do the work when how do you release the trauma when the trauma is coming in twice as fast, right? Like how do
Exactly.
you
Yeah, totally.
like I think in my
Totally.
book I think in my book I say something like it's like trying to get sober at Oktoberfest, right? Like
Yes. Oh
there's
my
just this
God, that's
level of
so
like
great.
how do I do this work? And then this person over here is calling me the N word, and now I'm trying to release that, and as I'm trying to release
Ah.
that, so there is that level of like it wasn't a great experience for meditation. So when I bought the headphones, I was like, I just need some space. In a world of no space, I need to find a way to get some space. I'm sure, I don't know, can you relate to that in
Oh
your
yeah, no, I
experience?
lived with earplugs in my ears because of that, like, again, that feeling of not just the noise, but just the constant inundation with stimuli, even in an environment that is very stripped of the opportunity to have meaningful experiences. Like, you are just inundated with a lot of other people's trauma, honestly, as they're like struggling to navigate it. And I totally hear you. Like, I spent, earplugs were my best friend in prison, for sure.
Yeah, so I bought these headphones and I was actually, in a place where there wasn't a lot of radios. Like you couldn't pick up FM very well, and so quite literally there was just kind of static. So I had this little FM radio, and I think in the ocean inside me, I mentioned like the radio was so cheap and plastic looking that it looked like a toy you'd pull out of a cereal box from the 1990s. Like, does this thing work? I don't
Quality
know.
materials.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And so um, all I could really get was static, and in part of that surrendering process was this, it's like, here we are. So, I don't know what your experience is like, and I don't know what other people who've been incarcerated experience is like, but I'd say for the first 6 months, there's this kind of like weird transitional period where every day I woke up and was like, today's the day someone's going to come in and say, we're getting you out of here. Like, there's this weird kind of like,
You're not really here. You're just, yeah, this is just a big misunderstanding.
yes,
Yes,
exactly. Yeah,
yeah.
exactly. And so after about 6 months of, okay, there's a surrender process that happens. And so I had to learn about the surrendering process through my meditation. And so part of that was like, I'm just going to surrender to the white noise. I'm going to let this white noise fill me up and just be with it and experience it. And it became less sort of frictiony and more fluid, like a river. And there was a real auditory connection of it almost sounding like rain. So growing up in the Pacific Northwest, I'm very familiar with the sound of rain. And so I don't know if my brain did that or if in general static noise for people sounds like rain, but there was this really like, oh, I feel like I can connect to nature in a place that has zero connection to nature.
Can I ask a question? Because, like, a part of me is almost jealous in the sense that, like, you had certain kinds of language available to you already, like because you had studied, you know, these practices, these meditation practices, you had language like "here I am" available to, like, that idea, even if it was intellectualized, was like there in your brain, just sort of like ready to be like teed up for this like very painful experience that you suddenly found yourself in. And it like, in a weird way, it seems like the surrender process, that letting go of that state of denial and that unrealistic like optimism came a lot quicker to you than it did for me. Like, it took me 2 years to get to that like place of "here I am." Right? Like, I feel like I lived in that limbo space that you're talking about, for like, because yes, like there was the limbo space of like, oh, maybe they'll let me be on house arrest with my mom, like, and then this whole big misunderstanding will work itself out. Like, I had that thing, but also I had the thing of like, I shouldn't be here. Like, I really shouldn't be here. So the adults in the room are going to figure this out. And so I ended up like, and I think weirdly also, the support that my family gave me at the time reinforced this idea that like I didn't belong there, and therefore I was always imminently about to get out
Yeah.
in my brain. And so that surrender process wasn't as complete and all consuming until I got my verdict, and when
Mm.
I had my sentence. Um, and so I don't know, do you think that like just having studied and having access to these ideas made them easier to grasp onto, or did a part of you like reject them initially as you were still struggling in that limbo space? Like, what was your relationship with that prior intellectualized knowledge?
Hmm. Again, just like what a beautiful question. And also, I want to answer it by saying yes, and because I want to hold space for you, knowing that like the amount of layers that you had was so convoluted. I don't, you know, being in another country, being thousands of miles away from family, not even knowing really how people are communicating, like not really understanding the laws of the. There's so much going on that I didn't have to navigate through. And so, like, to me, 2 years is it's incredible that it only took you 2 years. So I just kind of want to hold some space for you for that because,
Oh,
I
thank you.
mean, yeah, yeah. I mean, and we're always learning, we're always processing. And again, it's really easy to romanticize, and I make it very clear in my book. Uh, it's not like I became like some saint or some whatever. Like I was dealing with racism and white supremacists and neo Nazis every day, and
Which I want to get into, by the way, that aspect of being an outsider as well, which is something I can relate to, but probably not as like scarily as you did. But continue what you were saying.
yeah, I think it's easy to be like, oh my gosh, you went through so much and you did it so well, and it's like, yes, and there are very clear moments where I wanted to like grow tree trunks and just and punch everyone. But I'm also 5'1", 5'4" with a man bun, and and
You've just always had that man bun. It
I
has
want to be as
survived
tall
all.
as I want to be as tall as my wife.
Oh,
That's
very
that's
sweet.
kind of it. But knowing that I was actually in a predominantly all-white prison, being a person of color, it was this weird sort of like in more ways than one, am I like this marginalized small person? And that's why I said like my survival skills from my whole life kind of kicked in, and I knew where to go and where not to go and what to say and what not to say. And my education was kind of used a catch-22 because people don't really like people who are educated incarcerated. But it was also my education that helped me make kind of wiser decisions. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that there's a level of, you know, does my intellectualization of my understanding of religious studies and mysticism and spirituality play a role in my ability to do the healing? Yes, absolutely. But again, like the embodiment process is a lot slower of a process than we like. And in a world of algorithms and instant gratification and movement, like it's very counterintuitive to say, what if I just be still for a second.
Right. And what if I like hold on and like wait for it to like wait for the medicine to work? Like instead of us assuming that the medicine is going to work immediately. Um, hmm.
The sort of the be here now language from like Ram Dass or like things from Merton or the Dalai Lama, whoever you're reading, again, there's this romanticized like, just be here now. And it's like, I don't want to be
Yeah,
here right
be
now.
hearing now sucks.
Yeah.
Can I read a book about, guys in outer space instead? Because that
And
sounds
yeah,
way more fun.
yeah. And so there's this level of like my meditation. So what it really was I needed a safe space to do the healing because we all need these sort of spaces to heal. But what do you do if there's no safe space? And so it was like my body was showing up in real time, creating this space because I didn't have it. And the space was this meditation world where I was connecting to nature because I didn't have any access to nature. It
Wait, so
was,
how were you how were you
yeah,
connecting to nature when you didn't have access to it? That's really interesting to me.
yeah. So part of the headphones kind of created this sort of place where I could go deep within myself. I could center, ground, and go deep within myself. And it was like my body was naturally creating these visual worlds of like rain and water and ocean, where I could be peaceful and connect to the earth and connect to the land. I mean, like I said, I grew up in Oregon, so being in nature has always been sort of a space where I connect with myself and not
Pacific
having.
Northwest girl over here. I know what you're talking about.
And so, I mean, talk about such a tough disposition of it's all concrete and buzzing and lights and perpetual noise and cacophony that it's just like, I want to touch a tree. In fact, I remember one of the times I got transferred the first time, like, there was a tree. It had been like months that I'd seen one, and I got to see it. And like I cried. Like, there was just like this, like, such a desire to connect that it was so humbling and so like there was so much gratitude for just like even seeing a tree.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
100% hear you. I remember there were so many things that I missed, and nature obviously was one of them. I remember coming home, and the first thing that really hit me was the smell of the rain, like the smell of like the earth and the rain, and I was just like, oh God, like I had forgot, like it was so strong, and yet like it was a smell that was deeply buried in me that was suddenly unearthed again, and I was just like, oh, this is the feeling of being home. It is this smell right now. But I also remember like one of the times that I got driven into court in those prison vans that have like no windows so you can't see out of them. But I would hear things through even the prison van once we were starting to like navigate the streets of the city. And we passed by a schoolyard occasionally. And I only knew that because I could hear the kids, screaming their heads off because they're having a good time. And every single time it just sent chills through me because I just didn't have access to those things that we take for granted in the world. And yeah, anyway, continue.
I I have a question. Did your nervous system like when you came back, was it like all of a sudden like my your nervous system was like I can breathe, or did it like was it still in this kind of like survival, like I'm still in prison kind of mode?
So interesting question because there was definitely a week long where I was in a very weird psychological limbo space where I could barely sleep, I could barely eat, and I was extremely overwhelmed and overstimulated, but also like afraid that I might be hallucinating, like that it was like a dream come true, such that I was like, am I actually here? Or am I back in my prison cell and I've actually lost my mind?
Hmm.
There was that doubt. And like there was also this weird transition where like I was suddenly going from an entirely Italian speaking place to an entirely English speaking place. And the shift in my brain was very awkward because I had gotten to the point where I had started like becoming awkward in English. I was losing English words. And so like transitioning, and I would start like talking and not realize what language I was speaking when I was talking. And it was only by the looks on people's faces where they were like, we don't understand what you're saying.
Yeah,
So like there
yeah,
was just like
yeah.
this weird limbo space. But then of course, again, like my situation was complicated because the paparazzi were literally going after me. So like that weird feeling of like hypervigilance, of being sort of constantly monitored and hunted even, that feeling didn't go away because I was still in an environment where that was an active threat, you know?
I'm so
So
sorry. Gosh, I'm so, so sorry that that's kind of what our country seeks for entertainment is. I'm really sorry. It's interesting, like looking back, it's like when I was in prison, I would have dreams that I was outside, and I'd wake up and I'd be like,
fuck.
you know, yeah, exactly, Jesus. And then when I was out of prison, at least for the first 6 months, I had dreams that I was in prison, and it was just this shitty, like, I
Fuck.
mean, come on, yeah, yeah, like, it was just like, so it's just this level of like, it's interesting the way our bodies adapt so quickly. And it's just really interesting, this sort of liminal space of, and I want to be careful about my comparisons because I haven't experienced this, but it felt like I had come back from war and no one knew what that was. It very much felt like I don't I don't know how to relate, and I know other people don't know how to relate. And there was just such a fascination of I can go and get in a car and go to the grocery store if I want to, and
Yeah. Like I have access to a refrigerator. Like what? What? I can wash my clothes in a washing machine. Like, like,
and there was
yeah.
also at the same time there was like this normalcy to it as well. Like it was this really peculiar feeling of I can't believe I'm doing these things, and also it like I
Oh,
mean it
oh.
had been years since I
Here's one
yeah.
that I'm curious about for you. I became just like enamored with opening and closing doors when I got home. I was just like, here's a door, I can open it. Here's a door, I can go through it. No one has to open it for me. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da.
I mean I hope this isn't like too personal for the listeners, but like being able to close the door when you go to the bathroom and be like, no one has to like be watching me.
What a thing.
What a thing, right? Yeah, I mean, there's so many of these like odd circumstances. But then the trauma plays a role. Like I still, even today, when I go to the store, can't have people behind me. Like there's just this level of like need my wife to stand here as opposed to and some of those feelings still don't go away. And I'm working through those in real time. Being in crowds of people is like a big no.
Oh
Like
my
I'm just
God, I
like,
hate crowd. I cannot do crowd. That's so interesting. Is that have you found working with formerly incarcerated people that that's a universal like thing that we've developed? We have this sort of imposed upon fear, like claustrophobia around people.
claustrophobia.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is, at least in the people that I've talked to, the similar feelings are, I never got any space, and even if your intentions are good, you're reminding me right now of the lack of space that I got, for myself, for my body, for who I am. Like like my nervous system kicks in like with loud noises, like a car, like rubs by, or like God forbid, 4th of July, or
Sure.
for certain people, the 10th of July, because they're still, lighting fireworks off 7 days
Right.
later. But yeah, this level of just everything is like this. So, I mean, to go back to the original question of meditation, and like it was like it's what my body needed. It's what my nervous system needed. And I'd like to say that the universe was like, I'm going to give you this time and this space to be with the things that you otherwise would try to avoid, right? We're always finding ourselves busy. And then capitalism gives us a really beautiful excuse to stay busy. And then we justify it with spiritual language. right? Like, go and get this certification, go and get this thing, get your yoga certification. Now you're a Reiki master. Now you're all of these things that are just a reminder of, have you ever just slowed down and paused? And so, prison was the great pause. It was a very, very shitty pause. And again, nothing like romanticized about it. It was shitty, but it was also a forced pause.
Absolutely. Yeah, I remember actually there was these filmmakers who I was once speaking to after I got out of prison, but I had been like a little bit corresponding with them when I was inside. And at one point they were like, I know this is the most like insensitive thing to ever say, but I'm kind of jealous about how many books you're getting to read right now while I and I was just like, that's a funny thing to say. Okay. I want to talk about like how these techniques worked, but also because I love how you don't want to romanticize the thing, because on the one hand, these tools are and I do want to talk about a little bit the tools, the specific things that you were meditating on, that stillness. What did it mean, like finding the stillness, or what did that stillness reveal? I think I read that you said stillness became the loudest part of your day, which is so interesting. So I want to dig into that, but I also want to like encourage you to also tell me about when did the practice not work and what did you do then? Because equally, like I found myself some days being able to like get myself through it and other days just a freaking wreck. And it's like, well, I guess I'll start over tomorrow then, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think I write multiple times in my book of like this experience of here I am deep within myself, kind of connecting to this stillness, and then I'm hearing outside of this body people walking by calling me the N word or something, right? Which like pulls you all the way out pretty quickly. And so, like what I learned about meditation, and it's something that I teach clients is like if you can't find it in the mess, you're not going to find it in the mountains. And what I mean by that is like it is right here. Like the meditation is the work. It's not the result. It is the willingness to return when it doesn't work. When you're what else could it be except this? And this is the lesson. This is the life work. Is the hardness of showing up in a place that's impossible to show up. And so the encouragement for anyone looking into meditation is if you're looking for an escape, meditation isn't it. Meditation is supposed to teach you to be more present with the shitty things, not try to avoid them or escape them.
Mm. And
And
why is that good?
I think it's good because if you're honest and vulnerable enough to sit with the worst parts of yourself, it's not something that happens overnight. It's something that takes a life, maybe multiple lives. I don't know, of just, but it ends up leading to a spaciousness where you accept all the parts of yourself that you otherwise wouldn't have been able to accept, and then you can live with yourself, even in spite of the labels or in spite of what people are saying. It teaches you that you were never not enough. And I think that's one of the epidemics that our country is dealing with is like this I'm not good enoughness. I'm not, there's so much shame and there's so much like guilt, that we don't know how to be okay with ourselves. We don't know how to give ourselves permission to just be ourselves. And so I would say that that work, at least at the very least, creates that spaciousness to ask those questions. Am I good enough? Because what I found is for the first few months, I couldn't even ask that question. There was so much like shame or guilt or like, I mean, my brownness had always been a sense of shamefulness, because it reminded me that I wasn't like everybody else and that I was having to work twice as hard just to kind of be at ground level my whole life. And so meditation really taught me to sit with those parts. And one of the things I did is I ended up discovering my younger self. And
Oh,
this
well,
is
tell me more about
yeah,
that because I'm curious to know if it mirrors my experience.
yeah, yeah.
Say that. Tell me.
So, so actually, the first chapter opens up with like me going into my body and seeing my sort of middle school self in sort of a cafe in the cafeteria of my school, and he's like 13 or 14, and he looks at me and he has no idea who I am. Like, so I'm recognizing him, and I'm like, I'm somehow transported to my younger self. And what's interesting that I want to make clear is that this wasn't a memory. This was like almost like a real life. I'm somehow transported to his time. Um, and he's surrounded by his friends, but he's completely lonely. I mean, he's so sad and he's so lonely. Um, Later on in the book, like towards the end of the book, I kind of let it spill that this is like right before 9/11. So I'm in middle school when that happened. And what a shitty time of life to be dealing with something that sort of macro. And so I'm sitting with my younger self, and he looks at me and he goes, "Who are you?" I have no. So it was this very weird place in my body where I know I'm meditating, I know I'm in prison, I know I'm on my bunk. I can even hear people around me, and yet I'm really alive in this space with myself, and he doesn't know who I am. And there's this like desire to get to know him, and it's like, how do I reach him? Because I am him, I know all of his responses and his reactions. And growing up, I was super witty, super funny, super creative, super whatever. And he's giving me those responses like in real time to me in my body. I don't know if that is similar in any way or.
That's so interesting. So the thing that's very similar is when I encountered my younger self, it was also not a memory, right? Like I am not remembering just being a kid. I had, again, also interesting, middle school aged me, but in my cell with me, like sitting on my bed with me, on my bunk, and asking me questions about what are we doing here? And I had to like explain to her what was going on, which was in a way explaining to her what was going to happen to her. And because I'm the older of the two of us, I also have a deep, immediate instinct to console her and to tell her that she's going to be okay, which in a way was me sort of big sistering myself
Yeah,
through the
yeah,
experience in a really interesting way of like taking the thing that I was experiencing and putting it in front of me. And then again, all of this completely not purposefully. Like I did not purposefully imagine a younger version of myself. It just appeared and I was like, and I'm going crazy. Like I wasn't even meditating. Like I
yeah. I
was just
mean,
like,
my first thought is you were much further along the path than I was because she was asking you questions, which signals to me that she knew you or at least trusted you enough to ask the question and show up. And so
oh
I
yeah.
think I think part of the reason why my younger self wasn't showing up to me is because he didn't know me. So I showed up to him. But one of the things I talk about later in my book is when you get to know your younger self in those ways, you develop a relationship with him, and then you're able to go somewhere safer. That's safer for both of you. So as soon as I got to trust as soon as I got my younger self to ask these questions, I said, "Do you want to go somewhere?" And he said yes, and we went to a place that was both safe for both of us, which was like I grew up like going to a cabin on a river, and so in Oregon, and so we went to that space because prison wasn't safe and middle school wasn't safe. So we went somewhere that was safe for both of us, and that's where the conversations and the relationship could really form. But that took time. It's not something that you can swipe right on, and all of a sudden you're like, great, I'm healed. It does take time.
So I'm curious if you can tell me instances, and when we spoke, before, which was goodness, too long ago. You mentioned how, you know, your encounters with the white supremacists in your prison were absolutely a challenge to your spiritual practice, but in a weird way, were an opportunity for you to really exercise your spiritual practice. Can you talk to me about like how those encounters affected your emotional and spiritual well-being, and how did your practice prepare you to deal with that?
Yeah, I mean, so my spirituality is really landed in a space of actual inclusion, not just like talking about it. And we, especially in this sort of polarized country that we're now a part of, it's really easy to fall in one camp or the other. And as a person of color, it's really easy to fall into the camp of, fuck the white supremacists, and fuck the neo-Nazis and fuck MAGA culture or whatever, right? It's really easy to fall into that. And my spirituality says that feels kind of like a cop out. And and I was wrestling with that in real time, is like I am being oppressed and the injustices I'm facing by these men are awful. And so a part of my story is I ended up, and it's again, I think the universe providing this, because how else would it happen? But I was approached by the lieutenant to study law, and I became like the only lawyer for the prison essentially. And what a weird position to be in as a person of color in a predominantly white prison, is like all of a sudden I'm studying law and now I'm helping all these men with their legal problems, right? So there's this interesting shift of they have to go to me. And so part of my ego and part of the wrestling self on multiple occasions was like, I don't want to fucking help these guys. Like they're calling me the N word down there. They're spitting on me. They're doing all kinds of, just racial slurs and whatever else. I don't want to do that. And the universe said, and this is your work. And how could you not help these people? And so part of the spirituality and the meditation and the space that I was creating with my younger self, it gave me the opportunity to really sit in those moments and see what it would be like to be the person sitting across from me. Because what I said to myself was, if I really want this white supremacist to see my brownness, I have to sit in their white supremacistness. I have to see my own white supremacistness within me if I ever want the person to see their brownness within them. And 10 times out of 10, what I learned was I have to do the work first. I can't wait for this other person to do the work. I've got to do the work. I have to create the space where the needle can be moved, because they're not going to move it. And now we're sitting 10 years later in a world where each party is waiting for the other person to move the needle. And there's no compassion, there's no empathy. And it's a both and, right? I'm not justifying anything. I'm just saying, what does it mean to sit in this spaciousness long enough to become the thing that you hate in the other person? Because it's just a projection. It's one really large projection of ourselves.
Ah, gosh, that super resonates with me. I mean, do you think that, how do you respond to people who say that, if you give an inch, you give a mile. If you allow yourself to sit in the oppressor's shoes, you're just, tolerating injustice. What would you say to that?
I would say meditation is never supposed to justify the oppression, but the oppression that you're feeling is the oppression that the whole entire world is feeling, including your oppressor. So I think the mistake that we make often is we compartmentalize our injustices, and we say that person did that thing to me, and so I want some type of justice, right? Without realizing that the macro is a reflection of the micro, and the micro is a reflection of the macro. And when you start to see those connected dots, you say, if even just one single person isn't allowed the path to healing, then nobody heals. That's the real truth about spirituality and healing, is like, it's silly to say, let's go and push these people on an island, or let's go and push these people in prison, or let's whatever, so I can continue to heal. And I'm sitting, and now I'm sitting here from this position of like, that's so silly to think that you can put these people away or put blame on these people and still heal yourself. So I think the response is I never ever condone or justify the oppression. How could I? As a person of color in an almost all white prison, and now a formerly incarcerated felon who can't even get jobs, with a master's degree. Like I know what injustice is like in real time. And also, my experience of injustice should never lead me to just automatically thinking that other people should also experience injustice.
Right.
And that's the mistake we make is if this person is punished, then all people should be punished. And so sometimes there's this language around like, especially with incarceration, there's this language around like, if you're black, you're sentenced like twice as much and I'm like, absolutely. But the response isn't to then sentence the white person equally to the black person. The response is let's like not sentence anyone. Like
Yeah.
there's this like kind of this like what are we doing here kind of response. And so that's how I respond to that is spirituality always breathes both and that's a really hard space to sit in, especially now. Like I don't, with everything going on, I'm like, look, the worst thing you can do is spiritually bypass something, which for anyone who doesn't know what that is, spiritual bypassing is using your spirituality as a way of like not doing the work, essentially.
Right. Gosh, I love that. And that actually deeply resonates with me because I agree. I think that especially, I practice Zen Buddhism. And so Zen is really, really comfortable with living in those paradoxes and being allowed to, or allowing yourself to imagine what a world looks like where you are completely open and you have boundaries. Like,
Yeah.
and I'm curious to know, like, what did that look like for you? Especially as you were navigating these new relationships with people who both needed you and were dismissive and worse to
Yeah.
you. Yeah.
Well, I'd like to again say this isn't a romanticized like Hollywood movie. I didn't become friends with any of these people, and for the most part, a lot of them never wanted to work with me. They would come up to this law office in the prison where I was, and they would be like, "I don't want to sit with this N word," right? And I would say, "Okay, you can leave. Or I can help you try to get your kids back." Or I can help you with parenting custody time, or I can help you with these new charges that you're facing. I can try to like work on this post-conviction relief for you because I now have the knowledge in my brain to help you with these things. But like also, I'm not going to let you sit here, call me the N-word, and then me do all the work for you. So there has to be this common ground of let's see each other as human beings if we can. And again, this is not like like overnight, we're best friends. This is months of finally after a month, someone says something other than, whatever racial slur they wanted to. And there's a helplessness, there's a powerlessness in both parties. So it was like, because of my size and because of the fact that I'm outnumbered. The other thing that was very, very humbling for me is I would be doing all this work for these individuals in this lawyer space, and then this law space, and then we'd go back down to the prison, and they would just treat me as if they had never, come and seen me. So it took the meditation and the spirituality really helped me to see that one, this person doesn't know any better, right? And that's a beautiful way of looking at life. Is like it really does open up the spaciousness of like they don't know any better. These people are doing these awful things right now in our country. Like they don't know any better, right? And the other thing that the universe said is every single person, every motherfucker in this person is just trying to figure it out. There's no one who is not just trying to figure it out. I say this in my book kind of comically, but it's like, yeah, even white supremacists have to sleep, right? Like even they go to bed the same way that, you and I go to bed. And so there is this, how do we work to humanize that which we just perpetually dehumanize? in a world that says, good, let's continue to dehumanize.
So digging deeper into this question, I think one of the things that allowed this dialogue or this potential encounter to happen was the fact that this lieutenant put you in a position, an elevated position of like it almost makes me wonder if it was intentional, where he was like, oh, here's this kid who's being, kicked around by the others, obviously. Let's put him in a position where now all of those bullies need him. and then the power shifts. So would I'm trying to imagine, like, how do we translate that into the broader world where people are generally feeling helpless to have a meaningful engagement with other people in their own country? Like, is it a recognition that we all actually need each other? And like, in order for this country to frickin' work, we all have to at some point like actually encounter each other.
Yeah, I've wrestled with that a lot, and I don't know. I don't want to say anything that's like too political or too whatever, but I'll just say this is like my experience with COVID, right? And I was incarcerated during parts of COVID, and that was not that great. But my experience was anyone who just outright denied that it was anything was probably someone that didn't know anyone who died from it or lost their life from it. And I would say that's the same for anything. Anyone who doesn't give a shit about people incarcerated might not know anyone that's actually incarcerated. And so there is this level of like, maybe people just need exposure to the thing that they're hating in order to find that humanizing like capability. Like for example, like, I know people who are super against the stuff happening with immigrants, and I say, well, how many like illegal immigrants do you know? And often it's like, no one. I'm like, okay, well, I mean, great. Like, nice. You just kind
Let's
of answered,
start there.
yeah,
Yeah.
let's start there. Yeah. And so there is this level of like, and honestly, if I'm coming from the disposition of a spiritual teacher, I have to say, and how many friends do you have that wear red hats? Right? Like, so I mean, there is this level of you have to protect your boundaries. That's what you're saying. It's like there's the spaciousness and these boundaries. And more often than not, with the people I work with now, it's like, I don't even feel safe anymore. And I'm like, yes, honor your safety first. Like, honor and respect how you're showing up. That's really, really important. And if you can do that and still start to have these conversations, then do that. But nothing is black and white. So everything is relational and everything's depending upon the individual person. So if anyone ever says, well, should I have a conversation with these people who are blah, 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 I said to say, what do you mean these people? Who's the person that you're talking about? And I don't know, does that individual person, Jimmy, does he make you feel safe when you're having these conversations? No? Okay, then don't fucking have a conversation with them. Honor yourself. But this
Yeah.
other person who, fits whatever label you're
Janie.
talking
Yeah.
about, Jamie, if she's willing to say, why do you think that? Maybe go get a coffee and answer the question. That's kind of the sort of that liminal space that we kind of have to begin to sit in while still like honoring ourselves. And when I was in prison working with these men, I remember one of the first times where someone said something about themselves that I wouldn't have otherwise known in looking at their legal stuff. And it was just this very interesting, like, moment of human meets human in a place that there are no humans. It was very like almost like like for the first time in years, I found my breath or something. And I think that's what a lot of people are looking for is like, how do I find my breath again? And the answer is counterintuitive. The answer isn't like, go off to Antarctica and where you don't have to be around anyone. The answer, I think, is you find your breath by seeing yourself in the people that you don't necessarily want to associate with.
Yeah. This reminds me of something that we were talking about a little bit earlier, which, it's bringing me a little bit full circle to this idea, which is what is the value of going into the pain instead of avoiding it? What is the value of that? And one of the things that I have found really valuable about that is that, especially if we're experiencing or having that insight in prison, like prison is a metaphor for everything
Yes, it is.
because
Yes, it is.
we are all trapped in the life and the circumstances that we have. And we at a certain point you just have to live the life that you have, right? Like avoiding, like attempting to avoid or escape the circumstances that you are in because they're unpalatable or unpreferable ultimately leads you to not live your life and to
Right.
not effectively live your life as well, which is like, for me, that I think is the real key thing. Is it's like, okay, you first of all, you want to live your life. And second of all, you want to be good at living your life. You want like the things that you intend to have the consequences that you intend them to have. And the only way that you can do that is by really like knowing what it is that you're in. What is this shit that we're all in? And you have to sit with it to know it. And like, I think that maybe one of the things that free people who have never actually experienced incarceration like don't realize is that we're all trapped. We're
We're
all
all in it. Yeah.
imprisoned in this
Yeah.
thing that is this life, and all of us are stuck with each other. And I feel like we're acting as if we're not stuck with each other. Like that's the other side of it. Like that's the other side of we're all interconnected is we're all just fucking stuck with each other.
And we're all each other, right? Like, I mean,
Yeah.
I go to the level of like, and this is woo woo, but hey, here we are. Is I go to the level of like, I think that the universe is just showing up and saying, what would it like to be an Amanda experiencing this thing, and what would it like to be like to be an RG experiencing these things? And so all of a sudden, here we all are as the universe in our form, experiencing these things to remind us who we are. And we kind of have these experiences to sort of see if we can wake up and remember, oh, I am just the universe in this form, in this experience, in this body. And so is this person sitting across me who claims to be a white supremacist, right? Like, can we go beyond the form of the thing and see the energy underneath? And the energy is always the same energy. And it's like, okay, like here we are sitting in this thing. And so, I think the definition of someone trying to live a life that they no longer live is like delusion, right? Like there is this level of, and it doesn't mean prison, right? Like if you get a divorce and you wake up still pretending like you're married to, and you're still trying to like find that life,
Yeah.
like there's a reality of that's the great surrender. Like that's the willingness to say, okay, how can I show up to be my fullest self so that the universe can meet me in the fullest self? And then that's when the opportunities are provided. And again, I think what I studied in religious studies that really helped form my beliefs today is language is often the barrier to we're all talking about the same thing. So what I'm talking about is simply just like behavioral patterns, right? And but I'm using spiritual language, but like we are so like we reinforce our own patterns, and then we come up with situations to reinforce those reinforcements, and then we get stuck there. And so what I think the universe is constantly doing is providing us opportunities to break those cycles and break those loops. And so for me, as shitty as prison was, and again, no romanticizing, it did give me an opportunity to evaluate what my patterns were that I otherwise would have probably never have evaluated before. So like, what are these cyclical things that keep showing up? Maybe in multiple lifetimes, I don't know. But what are these things that keep showing up, and can I have a little bit of accountability and responsibility and opportunity to be able to change those patterns so that something else opens up in real time? And I think that's why I sort of say I think my willingness to sit with those wounds and the stuff that I hadn't before opened up the opportunity for me to go and study law and work in that place. Um, there just seemed to be this interesting sort of energetic shift within me that, if we're feeling it within ourselves, like where else could it be except everywhere? And so I think that there really is a solution of you do actually have the opportunity every day to see what those patterns are and ask myself, like, how can I shift them just a little bit? Maybe smile at the person instead of be angry at them because they're like, they cut you in line at the grocery store. I mean, I often tell people you want to be enlightened, get stuck in traffic. Like there's nothing worse for me personally than like just like being stuck in traffic, but that's the meditation. So we constantly have these small little opportunities to just show up um, and practice those things. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say that like the thing that I always tell myself, especially I love this idea of like remembering that we are sort of caught up in our behavior patterns, and we are, as much as we are processes, we also become static when our behaviors become cyclical, and we keep doing the same things and thinking the same ways and feeling the same feelings, and it's not great because then we're not actually being adaptable and nimble and, interacting with people in an authentic way. And the thing that I keep always telling myself, and this is something I learned from Sam Harris's Waking Up app, was just this idea of like, at any moment, you can just start over. Like, you can just be like, wait, I'm in a situation right now, and I think I'm just gonna stop this train and I'm just gonna take a step to the left and I'm gonna start on a new path now. And like, you can do that. Like, you are not stuck on your own trajectory. And
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Don't One of the practices I teach like some of my clients is like pretend like you're on a bank of a river and you're watching this stream, right? This river. And then all of a sudden you see this like piece of trash in the river, and you start to like follow it, which is kind of what people do anyway, like with like
yeah, it's a thing on the river. There you go.
and then another piece of trash. And then all of a sudden you're following the trash on the river and you're not just being with the river. And so our thoughts act as the same way. And so you're not supposed to pretend like the trash isn't there. But what you can do is just pick up the trash, set it aside, and then focus on the river. And then if another piece of trash comes by, you pick up the trash, set it aside. You can put it in a recycling thing if you want to, and then focus back on the river. And so you're acknowledging, so you're not avoiding, you're acknowledging that the thoughts exist. You're acknowledging that these emotions and these things are coming up, but you're not getting so distracted by them that you just follow them down this sort of stream of ever thought, right? I think, in Buddhism, they call it monkey mind, right? Like there's this level of just like, I'm just going to constantly go. And that creates such a
Boing,
fear
boing, boing.
culture.
Yeah.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly. It creates a fear culture and it creates an inability to sit with ourselves. And like I said, I think our country is kind of capitalized on that. Good hustle culture. Go, go, go. Do what you need to do. Get something done. Start a business. Get millions of certifications. And like all those things, I guess, in isolation are okay. But no one's actually doing that aside from the monkey mind that they've been dealing with their whole life. Yeah, and so I do believe that we can start to find these techniques within ourselves to help separate out the thought patterns that don't help us.
Hmm. Speaking of, one thing I love to acknowledge, at least for myself, is that I am imperfect at doing this kind of thing. Like, I've figured out how to do it, and even so, I often fail to do it, which is why I need to remind myself to just start again, start again, start again. And I was curious to know, like, where do you find yourself getting stuck in the behaviors today, and like what kind of circumstances or relationships? Because I've found that, like, for me at least, it's very often in those circumstances or relationships where I feel most safe, oddly, because I've sort of let my guard down. I've sort of taken some things for granted. And it's like I'm always remembering all of these like great, lessons for dealing with crises situations, or in like in situations where I am expecting conflict, but in scenarios where I'm not necessarily expecting conflict, and in fact I'm actually expecting the opposite, and then I suddenly discover myself in conflict. That's when I get like a little flustered, because I'm still living in that space of like, wait, that's not what this circumstance or relationship should be. And then I have to be like, oh, wait, no, no, no. Start again. Start again. It's all like, I'm curious to know what, if you have a particular thing where you're like, duh, I teach people this thing and still.
I think the response I always give to clients is like, if you're trying to get it right, you've already gotten it wrong. So meditation, we have to kind of like learn how to like let go of this like get it right mindset, because that's not what meditation is. It's just allowing the isness, beyond right and wrong, right? It's like just allowing the isness to exist. And so this like, well, I feel like I'm not doing it right, or I am always getting it wrong. Okay, like that has nothing to do with meditation. So tell me something about meditation. Um, and then my thought process is like when you sort of said, are you ever caught off guard with situations that are seemingly safe? Well, it's that's exactly it. Is you have like we have all of us created these systems that this thing is safe, this thing is not, and those create expectations around those safety, like those safety nets. When we label something that's not safe, it's not safe because we don't know the expectation, we don't know the outcome, so we're already going into it actually like a leg up,
Right.
right?
With a more open mind.
You're like, yeah, well, like that if I'm gonna go to like I don't know if I'm gonna go downtown and during a rally and someone showing up with a gun, yeah, I could die. But like if I go into my living room and drink some coffee, it's gonna be great. And then someone outside revs their engine, and I'm like, fuck, like, and I spill my coffee, and my whole day's ruined, and I'm just like, it's because of the expectations that we've already set for the thing. And so again, we always go back to surrender. Like, how can we surrender in this moment that we don't really know what the fuck's going on? And we don't really actually have a lot of control. Like, that's what prison showed me, like very physically, which is what you were talking about, is like we're all trapped, right? Prison was the like physical embodiment of the like spiritual reality, right? And that's also what I teach a lot too, is like these physical realities are a reflection and projection of our spiritual like realities. How could they not be? When we like think of something over and over and over and over, how could we not create an energy that then like puts that energy out there and brings that result? So I don't know if there's an answer as far as like, let go of your fucking expectations, Amanda.
Yeah, like,
I don't know. I don't know. I
do,
have no idea. I wish I
I mean,
knew.
can I not have expectations about my husband? Like, how do we live? How do we like navigate a world with a mind that is like a completely open child's mind full of wonder, and yet still function as an adult?
I mean, you're asking such an excellent question. I wish I knew the answer. I mean, I think just looking at my own life, it's I'm wildly surprised by people on every end of the spectrum. It's like, well, I thought that person was someone different. I mean, I definitely realized that when I went to prison and saw who my friends were. Right? It was this level of like,
Fair.
well, I've known that
Word.
person since 11.
Word.
I've known that person.
Word.
Yeah, it's like okay, like so, and family members too, right? Like, I mean, we are living in this interesting shift, I think. And this interesting shift is saying it's okay to let go of the parameters that people taught you that you needed to hold on to. It's okay. Like it's okay. We're all just figuring it out. So if this thing hasn't been working for however many hundreds of thousands of years or whatever, let's like pause, let's reflect, and like let's create something that is sustainable and accessible to all people so we can make this thing work. And then noticeably, there are going to be people who don't like that. They're going to push up against that. And it's okay in those moments to let that go. Like, it's okay to be like, okay, um, great, you're still a racist. Like, I'm probably not going to hang out with you because I don't feel safe. Um, but yeah, like, so I think we are in this weird upheaval, like I said, that is opening up our patterns and our observations and our reflections on who do we want to be as people and what kind of world do we want to create for other people. And I found more often than not, like religion, either end of the spectrum is not great. When you go to really, really far side in religion and really, really far side in religion, you're like, oh, these people are all just kind of talking about the same thing, which is their own inability to heal or their own inability to like address their own wounds. But if you sort of like walk into this liminal mystic space, which is why I love the mystics, it's like we're here, we're in the gray area, we're in no man's land, and like so is everybody. Um, that's where, like I said, I think you can move the needle. But it's really, really important not to get caught up in these sort of tribalistic sort of idealizations of right and wrong because of the forms or because of the labels. Um, and again, I'm not saying that you shouldn't agree with certain things that are found in whatever label you want to, but when you mistaken the form for the thing itself, that's when we really began to create like this pattern of what we're seeing in our world today, where no one is really willing to relate with anything other than a projection that looks exactly like them. Like let me give you a perfect example. Like I did go to a rally, a month ago or something, and I saw a lot of signs that said like he's a felon, like convict, whatever, these sort of convicted felon signs about Trump. And
And you're like, ouch.
yeah, I'm like, I don't know if that's the best like language, and then on the far right, there's this language of they're illegals, deport them, and I'm like, this is the same thing. It's the same energy. It's the same thing of let's just create this
Like,
thing.
I need to invalidate this person using the language of the law. That
Exactly.
is, yeah.
Yeah, and so we kind of need to be willing to separate ourselves. It's too easy. It's a cop out. Like, it really is. We need to separate ourselves from those forms, um, because the forms never get us anywhere. They never ever get us anywhere. It's what allows us to stay separate. I often tell this to people is like, everybody is somebody's bad guy.
Mm.
So,
I mean, so what's your rally slogan then? If it's not,
jeez.
he's a felon, like what is it? Do you have a slogan or you're like, I'm just anti-slogan?
Yeah, my slogan is anti-slogan.
Like, yeah.
Um, um,
This is
I,
a sign.
yeah,
I
exactly.
have feelings.
Yes, I have feelings. I don't, that's such a beautiful and funny question. What would my slogan be? I don't, I'd have to think about that one. I think a lot of it is um, something about going beyond the labels. Um, because again, like it's, as a formerly
Would
incarcerated,
yours just be like a blank sign? Just not written on.
I think mine would be a window,
Ah,
right?
a
Like
mirror.
a
How about a
mirror.
mirror? I love
Yeah,
that.
that's very
Like
Rumi-esque.
look at
Yes.
yourself. Yeah.
Yes. This is my sign. It reminds me of a
Like we
Halloween
see
costume.
you.
Yeah. Ooh, I
Yeah.
like that. Yeah, we
Yeah.
see you. I mean, I think there is a level of course I feel injustice. I'm a brown person who's formerly incarcerated. I'm at risk for a lot of the shit that's going on. So I'm not gonna stay home, right? That's maybe one answer is I'm not staying home. And also, even when I go, I'm holding space for the people that are there and the emotions that they're feeling and saying, yeah, I'm with you. I'm feeling this with you as a collective response. How can I hold the space for you? And it was funny because it took me a little bit of meditating to realize that. Because when I first showed up to one of my first rallies, I was like, do you realize we're all just yelling at each other and we are yelling at the people that we agree with? Like we're here yelling at it with like, and I was like, this is interesting. Like, and it was kind of comical. But then I realized, no, there is this collective energy that's happening, and there's a lot of this sort of hopeful collective energy that's happening, and that's really, really important. And a lot of the people I'm meeting with today, there's a feeling of unrest and unsafety, and I'm not feeling heard, and I'm not feeling seen, and I'm scared. So my goal as a spiritual teacher is always just to hold the space for people to feel what they're feeling. Not to like move the energy one way or the other, but just to hold the space for people to move their own energy. Um, but you have to create that space that's safe enough for people to be willing to start to engage in those type of movements. But yes, I'll have to think about the sign thing. That's really funny. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
Free Amanda
it's
Knox,
a
maybe.
there you go. That's an all around everyone's all
Just
around
something
good
that's
one.
like, a
Just
decade
off the
old and
top of your head.
yeah. What
uh,
would your sign be?
mm. Well, I mean, I'm loving these. I think it depends upon the circumstance, obviously, but like, yeah, I mean, I like the idea of saying like we exist and we matter. Like that totally resonates. Because ultimately I think a lot of the fear is the fear that other people don't recognize that you exist, or if you do exist and they recognize it, that you don't matter. And I feel like that makes a ton of sense. But yeah,
It's funny. It's like I was talking to my wife about this the other day, and she's white, and so we were talking about this feeling of fear in it, and I sort of said like, and also welcome to being a brown person, right? So like there is an interesting feeling of like, great, you're stepping into the shoes of someone who has been marginalized their whole life and has experienced this unrest and this unsafety and this kind of survival energy. So like there is a sort of like a hey, can we step back and notice that now we can have a little more capacity to hold that emotion for each other and hold that empathy for each other, at the very least. But yes, I think we exist. I think we matter is so beautiful and so important. And
I've definitely
yeah,
held up a sign that said the truth matters. So that's something that
our
I
system
think.
doesn't seem to care about that though. So
Yeah, yeah. And then everyone's like, oh, the truth is subjective. Does the truth really exist? And it's like, well, I hear you. And also, there are some things that are just true and other things that are not. So, yes, and.
it is a yes and I for a long, long time I just held the space. Like I really, really held the space. And then there came a point where I said, why am I feeling this? And it was like, oh, I'm feeling like I did in prison. And I remember asking the universe when I was incarcerated, why the fuck this? Like why? Like why? Um, and I didn't really get an answer. And then, to be honest, when Trump was elected, I got a really clear answer from the universe of like, this is why. It's because what is now happening on a macro scale, I experienced in a condensed micro version, like or in a micro in the body 10 years ago. So there really was like oh, I've been prepared for this. I know what this is like at a very, very, very dangerous and concentrated level, and I now have the tools to like help people create that sense of safety to still be able to do the work, right? Because if we want people to work on themselves and heal and address their wounds and create conversations with people they otherwise wouldn't, they have to feel safe enough to even begin to do that work. And so that's kind of, some of the tools and stuff that I do. And it's like, oh, I learned this in my body, uh, like I said, almost a decade ago. Now I know what this is for. Um, and I gave this analogy in my book, I think, but also the recognition of, and maybe you felt this way, is like prison is like a car rolling, like getting in a car wreck, and it's like rolling down the hill. And what I tell people is like, when you're rolling down a hill in a car, you might be breaking your bones, but you're not really feeling any of it. You're just
Mm,
holding on. And only
yeah.
when the car stops are you like, oh shit, my elbow broke and my shoulder's dislocated and my ribs broken. And I think, once the car stopped moving is like when I felt all this stuff. And I think our country is rolling. And so I don't know if a lot of people right now have the capacity to even feel that their arms are broken or shoulders are broken. I think right now it's holding on. And when the car eventually stops moving, people are going to be like, oh shit, I am feeling so wounded and hurt, and now I have a little more capacity to figure out how to heal this broken body.
Is how do we collectively stop the car from rolling down the hill though? Like how, and I maybe it's not we it doesn't like maybe like what does that even mean for it to stop? I guess is the thing. Like because there's one thing for on a personal level, you're like I'm in prison now, I'm not in prison, but how do you translate that when I feel like
Yeah, I'm gonna give you a really hot take. Okay,
okay,
I'm gonna
hot
give
take,
you
throw it at me.
this is a really really hot take. I don't know if oh gosh, this is a hot take. I don't know if Kamala Harris would have been any better of a choice. And I say that because she was a person of color. She's a person of color. She's a woman. She had, I mean, such a beautiful opportunity, but she was also like her whole thing was riding on this narrative of like, let's put the bad guy away.
Right, she's a
I'm a
prosecutor.
prosecutor and he's a felon and let's put the bad guy away. And so I don't know if that would have moved anything. I think people might have felt safer, but only the people who have felt safe. There's a whole world of people who have never felt safe, and I don't think that necessarily there would have been any safety for them through Kamala. And so a part of me wonders like, did this thing have to happen for all the cards to kind of be put on the table? Like we knew it was all there, but the cards have been kind of hidden, and now it's just all there. And
Yeah.
so I kind
The
of
good, the
wonder.
bad, the ugly, it's just all there for everyone to see. Yeah.
it,
Okay.
it gives us collectively an opportunity to see what we probably knew what was going on, but now know for certain what's going on. And in a world where Kamala would have been president, I don't know. One of the signs, going back to the signs, I saw a sign that said something like, if Kamala had been elected, we'd all be at brunch. And I remember just thinking, who's we?
Yeah. Mm.
Who's we would all be at brunch? Like, because I wouldn't be at brunch. I'm a formerly incarcerated person who is a felon and, whatever. So, like, who is the we that we're talking about? So, again, there's a lot of wounds happening. But my hope, and never justifying the suffering, I'm never going to justify suffering and I'm never going to take away someone else's suffering. The hope is that this is not for nothing. And the hope is that this gives us an opportunity to put a light on something that we might have never otherwise put a light on.
Mm. Well, with that, RG, I would like to thank you for being a part of Hard Knocks, and I can't wait to just continue hanging out in the future. Hope you
Yeah,
have
thank you so much.
thank you for being a part of this.